Going on, movie fans? This is episode 3 of the Real Takes podcast here on WSVC Radio. I'm your host, Dan Sisk, and this week I'm really excited to talk about the new release in theaters this weekend, Heretic. I checked this out on Friday before I went up to Penn State for the weekend, and you know a movie is good when you are going up to Penn State to visit friends and hang out and go to a Penn State football whiteout game, and this movie is like a worm in the back of your head that you can't stop thinking about. I cannot wait to talk about this. I've been so excited to record this podcast for the last couple days. So let's get started. Heretic is a new horror thriller that came out from A24 this past weekend. It is written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. And I did not remember who these guys were, even though I recognized the names, until I looked them up after I saw this movie. They are the ones who came up with the pitch for A Quiet Place. They're the ones who came up with the idea, and they're the ones who wrote the original script. However, they got kicked off of their screenplay early in development of that movie because Paramount felt that their script was very disrespectful toward disabled people, because remember, the daughter in that movie is deaf. So they handed the script over to John Krasinski, and he rewrote it and turned it into the movie and the franchise that we all know and love. And then Scott Beck and Brian Woods went on to do 65 with Adam Driver, and I did not see that movie because it looked like one of the worst things I've ever seen. It basically looked like a bad imitation of Planet of the Apes and a bad imitation of Jurassic Park. So I did not know this going in, and as a result, I am truly stunned that Scott Beck and Brian Woods turned out a movie with this kind of quality, but we'll get to that in a second. This movie stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. It's basically just the three of them. They're pretty much the only actors who have decent screen time in the movie. Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East play a couple of Mormon missionaries, and they attempt to convert Hugh Grant to Mormonism. And they realize once they have entered his home that he is slowly trying to break down their faith. And that's really all I can say without spoilers. So the trailer for this movie basically showcases the premise as I've described it. And I was not really blown away by the trailer because it kind of looked a little tame and a little restrained. Obviously, we have seen a lot of paranoia, secluded environment thrillers in the last couple of years. 10 Cloverfield Lane, Split, stuff like that, where the antagonist is clearly trying to either kill or seriously hurt the captive protagonist. However, I found it really interesting when I saw the trailer for Heretic that Hugh Grant's character isn't trying to hurt these girls. He's just trying to break down their faith. And I found that to be a really compelling idea, but I still wasn't sold because I knew that the only way the movie would work is if the script was really smart. Guys, this script is so good. It's so good. It is remarkably well-intentioned. It does not pick a side. I was really impressed with the fact that Beck and Woods could have easily said, we support religion or we hate religion, and they would have alienated half of their audience. But I'm really happy with their choice to leave it ambiguous. And a lot of the ambiguous elements are spoilers, so I can't go into them in depth here. But they are there, and I loved every single second that they were on screen. This script has so much to say, and it's so well thought out. It's essentially a movie where it's one of those rare horror movies that is almost completely dialogue-driven. And dialogue-driven movies can go one of two ways. They can either become narcissistic and pretentious, where you want them to end as soon as they can, or it can go in the direction of something like Conclave, which I reviewed in episode 1 of this show, where you are engaged with every line of dialogue and you can't wait to see the next thing that happens. And this is definitely in the latter camp. This movie is essentially 3 conversations as we go to different portions of his house. The first scene is in his living room, the second scene is in his study, and the third room is in his basement. There is pretty much no gore. There's pretty much no violence. The movie is completely driven by its dialogue. And luckily, the dialogue is incredibly engaging and incredibly interesting. Hugh Grant is exceptional in this movie. He's able to take very difficult and dense dialogue, and as I said, he is able to keep you incredibly engrossed and incredibly engaged in it. The scene in the study, where all I can say is he compares religion to various other forms of entertainment, and how religion is almost comes in different adaptations and different iterations. That scene is one of the best scenes I've seen all year. From the writing, to the performances, to the way the scene was shot, to the pacing, everything about it just worked. Everything about it worked at every element at every stage of the filmmaking process. That scene delivered, and it was a true joy to watch. Sophie Thatcher, she really comes into play in the first half of the movie. The first half is basically her movie, and the second half is Chloe East's movie. Thatcher really, really shines. I've been a fan of hers since, I still am, on the show Yellow Jackets over on Showtime. I highly recommend that show if you haven't seen it. I believe the first season's on Netflix. Highly recommend. Fantastic thriller. Sophie Thatcher is a highlight there, and she, once again, does a very, very good job here. She's able to ground a lot of the pro-religion arguments that this movie has to offer, and she does it without coming off as a pretentious douchebag, which again is a really, really impressive feat from both Beck and Wood's perspective, having written the dialogue, and from Thatcher's perspective, actually delivering that performance. The second half is basically Chloe East's movie, and the arc that character goes on is a true joy. The movie starts off where she's basically the comic relief, and she does a very good job delivering the comic relief. But the second half, the humor almost completely goes away with her, and she has to resort to having to develop her character pretty extensively as the character's trying to grapple with what she's witnessing and what she's willing to believe or what not to believe. And East delivers in spades. She is very, very good in this movie. I'm actually not familiar with this actress off the top of my head, so her performance was really, really good. If you are a horror fan, I think it is a really, really good time to be in the space right now. We have gotten so many fantastic horror movies this year, and as someone who really enjoys the horror genre, it's not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but I really, really enjoy it. This year has been a true joy to watch when you're as a fan, let's say, of the horror genre. One of my favorite movies this year, The Substance, is going to go on to become a body horror classic. This movie is one of the best films I've seen this year. This is definitely going in my top 5. We have Oddity. We have The First Omen, which I loved. We have Alien Romulus. We have Longlegs. We have A Quiet Place Day 1. We have Strange Darling. We have Speak No Evil. We have Late Night with the Devil. This year for horror has been truly exceptional. And it's also been really entertaining to watch a lot of horror movies that are original stories. Because obviously most of Hollywood's product these days is franchise driven, and while I enjoy a lot of those stories, I really like seeing something new, and the horror genre is one of the few genres right now where the budgets for these projects are so low that studios are willing to take a chance on original ideas. And Heretic is one of the movies where the budget, it had a less than $10 million budget. We don't have an exact number yet, but the fact that this movie was made for so cheap yet is so compelling and so interesting and so engaging is a true work and of art, frankly, from Scott Beck and Brian Woods. And again, I cannot believe that these two guys delivered a product of this quality given their track record, given the fact that while they came up with A Quiet Place, they had to get kicked off because their script was ableist. And, these are the guys who made 65, which looked like a schlocky sci-fi movie that no one would want to watch, and no one did. The box office was awful on that movie. So the fact that they delivered a script of this quality is pretty exceptional. I truly cannot recommend this movie enough. I know I'm sounding like a madman trying to sell you on this, but it really is impressive how this movie does not take a side. With a movie like this, where you're dealing with something as personal and as devout as religion, it is really, really difficult to walk on a tightrope and make sure that you don't offend anybody in order to bring in the largest audience possible. I praised this about Conclave. If you recall, one of my biggest praises for Conclave was that it was able to showcase a dichotomy between liberal-leaning cardinals and conservative-leaning cardinals without overtly picking one side or the other. And it made that movie very, very compelling. I would argue that the same thing is done here. I think that not overtly saying religion is real or religion is fake and just listening to these characters raise points to each other, both pros and cons for their stances, and not picking a side is one of this movie's best elements because it really makes you think. I saw this with my dad, and one of the best parts of the movie was just talking about it after the movie ended because there was just so much to dissect and so much to talk about, and the ending was so interesting and so compelling to watch. And there are very few movies these days that can really make you feel like that, because obviously movies and television have become very infantile in many ways. So it's rare to get a movie that is so deep and so nuanced and so thought-provoking. It really, really is. There are not many movies made like this these days, particularly in the horror genre. I don't know if this will be for everyone. Again, there's like no gore. There's a couple blood splatters here and there, but this is a dialogue-driven movie. You have to know that going in, and you have to be willing to engage with the dialogue. Again, dialogue that is very dense and is very difficult on the surface, but if you're willing to work with the movie and if you're willing to explore what it's trying to say, both pro and anti-religion, I think you are going to be hypnotized by this movie's points and some of the comparisons that they make. I cannot recommend this movie enough. It is easily one of the best movies of the year. It's definitely second best horror movie of the year. I think it's not quite as good as The Substance, which I think is going to go on to become a body horror classic, a body horror masterpiece. But this movie, again, if you like horror movies, if you like thrillers, and if you like thought-provoking cinema, oh man, guys, I cannot recommend this movie enough. This is easily the best movie playing in theaters right now. If you want to go to the theater at this moment in time, I cannot pick a better movie than Heretic. This is so much better than Venom. I thought this was considerably better than Conclave. I have not seen Nora. I know that's in limited release right now. It might be in a theater near us at St. Vincent, but I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to that movie. But of the movies I've seen in theaters, and I obviously see a lot of them because I'm a movie fan and because I have to do this show, this is easily the best one. I think this is going to go down as a horror movie that we remember. And like I said earlier, I think this is shaping up to be one of the best years for horror in the history of the genre. And we still have a couple movies left. We still have Nosferatu from Robert Eggers, the director of The Northman, a movie that looks truly spectacular in every sense of the imagination. And we also have a couple other movies that have yet to come out that I probably don't even know about because they aren't very well advertised. A lot of these horror movies aren't. I have to go looking for them in order to make sure that they're coming out. But I love doing it because every once in a while you can come across a movie like this that is a true joy to watch and so compelling in every sense of the word. So, guys, please, 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 at some point, go see Heretic. Either watch it in theaters or watch it on digital and streaming once it hits. This is an A24 movie, and they have a streaming deal with Max. So this will hit Max in a couple months. Please watch it. It is so thought-provoking and so engaging and so entertaining. I just absolutely adored it. Easily one of the best movies of the year. So that is it for this week. That was the only thing I was able to get done because I had a lot of stuff going on this week. That was the only movie I was able to watch. But next week we have an awesome show. A Real Pain comes out in theaters. That's the new Jesse Eisenberg movie that he wrote and directed, where he co-stars with Kieran Culkin. That is supposed to be a huge awards contender. It's projected to get nominations specifically for original screenplay and best actor for Kieran Culkin. So that's going to be a movie for movie fans. That's going to be a hot ticket. I can't wait to watch that next week. Reviews have been stellar. And then we also have reviews for The Penguin, which as of the recording of this video, the finale airs tonight. So I will be catching up on that show. I've seen the first 5 episodes, and I absolutely adore it. I have no reason to believe that the rest of the series won't be of the same quality. And, just like Agatha all along, I'm going to be delivering another superhero review, which can be a little repetitive, but, I love that stuff, so I'm going to keep reviewing it because I love talking about it. So, A Real Pain and The Penguin next week. 2 projects that I have very high hopes in, and I fully expect to give glowing reviews to. It's going to be a really, really fun time, so I hope you'll tune in next week. Until then, this has been episode 3 of the Real Takes podcast. I am your host, Dan Sisk. I'll see you next week.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Matt Boyer, station manager of WSVC Radio. If you like what you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified with all of our newest updates. Every day, one of our shows is releasing a new episode. Stick around and stay tuned.